Joining us now on our instant reaction series, episode number 4, is Buccaneers on Sports Illustrated writer Evan Winter, our good friend of the brand, Evan Winter. Evan, thank you so much for coming on, brother. Good to see you. How are things on your side of the country down in Nashville?
Everything couldn't be better, Joey. Thanks for having me on. And Mike, it's good to see you as well.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Of course, we have Mike Szabo with us. We got a chance to chat on the Primetime Rundown about the entire Super Wild Card weekend, with the exception, of course, of this one, because this one felt a little personal, especially just because it's Eagles-Bucks, and we had to hold off and have a special little segment just with Evan, and I'm glad that Mike is able to join us as well. So, Evan, let us get to the, not only to the predictions, but a little preview, if you will. For me, I got to start off with Vita Vea on his way back. You got a chance to look at the number one rushing offense in the entire league. All of a sudden, you got a chance to see what this Eagles rush can do. You got Miles Sanders, you've got Boston Scott, you've got Kenneth Gainwell. And when I was on your podcast a couple of months ago, we were talking about that, about the running attack. And there was not much there from the Eagles. And all of a sudden, Nick Sirianni puts his foot down. And all of a sudden, his team is now the number one rushing offense in the league.
Yeah, it was weird in that game, especially that the Eagles didn't really run the ball until late in the third quarter, well into that game. And when they did, they started having a ton of success. And it kind of, I'm not going to call it a comeback, but it at least made the score respectable at the end of the day and forced Tampa Bay to, kill the clock, throw that last pass to Antonio Brown, so on and so forth. And since then, yeah, they've really taken off. They also traded Zach Ertz following that Week 6 matchup. And that's really helped Dallas Goddard blossom into one of what I think is one of the best tight ends in the NFL. So a lot has changed since that matchup, primarily on Tampa Bay's side in terms of personnel. So it's going to be really interesting to see how everything plays out this weekend.
Yeah, so we were talking about just before we got on here and started the record button, was that the weather also in Tampa, it's not supposed to be good either. It's about, I think, from what we're reading here through multiple sources here, strong wind gusts of about 40 to 50 miles an hour, and strong thunderstorms with a thunderstorm warning around the area in Florida. That's something that they're playing in the elements. Philadelphia is used to playing in all different types of elements, especially because they do play in Pennsylvania. It's fairly cold come January. But in Tampa, this is kind of what they do in January. They play in the rain. They play in these strong elements that are going to be, that's going to be impacting the game. Do you see that as something that could be a major factor that could potentially swing one way or the other, Evan, or no?
Yeah, so a lot of it really just depends on the wind factor. I'm looking up right now on the weather, and yeah, it looks like 82% chance of thunderstorms, around 68 degrees as the high, wind gusts around 20 to 30, chance of rain 80. So, I mean, they played in the rain in Week 4 against the Patriots. Now, granted, they won that game 17-16. You would like to think the lower the score in this matchup, the more it favors the Eagles. So if it gets down to something where they're going to have to, grind the ball out, grind the clock out in terms of a running game, the Eagles definitely have an advantage. But at the same time, I think Tampa Bay, they have a good enough offensive line. They have a good enough front seven, especially since Shaquille Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul are supposed to return this week, to where that the Eagles don't have an overwhelming advantage. Yeah, certainly it's going to change things if Tampa Bay can't air out the ball like they want to, especially when you consider how the Eagles are vulnerable at the second level when it comes to pass defense and all that good stuff. So it'll definitely have its impact, but I don't think it would be anything, to where Eagles fans should all of a sudden be beating their chests coming into the game.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And again, obviously with the Bucks, actually both Mike and myself, we were talking about it just before you logged on, Evan. And the Bucks, they have a pretty big CVS receipt list of an injury report. And, a lot of it is obviously limited participation. Shaq Barrett, Jamel Dean, Mike Evans, Cyril Grayson, who we expect obviously not to play. But then you also have someone that will be making his return most likely. And, give us your thought on that if that is the case, in fact, with Levante David coming back. It's a big part of the middle of the defense there that most likely will be returning.
Yeah, it's huge. I don't think I haven't checked up on the headlines. I don't know if he's officially returning just yet or not. But everybody that was on the Bucks injury report, the Levante David, Leonard Fournette, and Giovanni Bernard, they're not on the Bucks injury report right now because they're still on IR. So and correct me if I'm wrong, please. But I haven't seen if he's officially returning. If he does, that's huge, especially in this game against the Eagles with how good they are in terms of the perimeter run game on offense. And then plus, Kevin Minter, who is his replacement, the guy is a good run defender. However, sideline to sideline speed, athleticism, it's not there, mainly because that's not been part of his game his entire career, but also because he's an older veteran. And when it comes to this Eagles run game and how the Bucks want to defend it, most likely what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to bring a safety. They're going to have to run a 3-safety set, bring in a safety like Jordan Whitehead, Mike Edwards, Antoine Winfield. They rotate them a lot, and they're going to have to put them in the box in order to cover that sideline to sideline area, for lack of a better word, that Kevin Minter can't. But then at the same time, that is sacrificing size, which we know how much the Eagles' offensive line can take advantage of that. So if Levante David is in there, he can really offset a lot of those potential matchup issues. But yeah, and he's also the heart and soul of the defense. So it's a huge deal if he can come back this weekend for sure.
Yeah. Now, Mike, take it away, please. Love to get you in a part of this conversation with Evan, of course.
Yeah, I know. I was hearing some of what Bruce Arians had to say in his. I think he was saying that Levante David and Leonard Fournette might be the most questionable headed into the weekend. So if Fournette is not there, you're relying your rushing attack on Le'Veon Bell, Giovanni Bernard coming back in. How much of a concern is it offense if Fournette can't come back? And they're going to have to deal with the elements a little bit, so maybe you have to lean more on the rushing attack, and you don't have a huge part of that attack in there. How much concern could the Bucks have?
Yeah, so Leonard, what he does, he really blossomed him into a 3-down back before his injury, and he wasn't. Giovanni Bernard was brought in to pretty much be the guy on 3rd down, your obvious passing situations. But Lenny essentially took that role from him as the season went on, and like I said, he developed into a 3-down back. He developed into the Bucks workhorse. So not having him there in the lineup is a big deal. However, Tampa Bay's offensive line is the top 5 offensive line, if not top 3 offensive line in this league. So they can kind of offset a lot of the deficiencies at running back. Even though Ronald Jones isn't going to go in this game, and you're right, Cyril Grayson, just to add that in there, isn't going to go in this game as well. You should still feel pretty confident if Lenny doesn't go, because you have Keyshawn Vaughn, who's looked pretty good in spot duty over the last few weeks. He definitely has a lot left to be desired, but Le'Veon Bell has looked good, especially in passing downs. He's looked okay running the ball from time to time, but I think there's enough to lean on, especially with how good that offensive line is.
And what do you think is the biggest key, really? Because we talk about Philadelphia's rushing attack, how good they've been, especially the second half of the year. Is it the front 7 are just going to have to load that box, force the Eagles to make Jalen Hurts throw, and whether it's the conditions or Hurts, and this is going to be a start, of course. Is that going to be the path to victory?
It's going to be tackling. I mean, I know that sounds basic and fundamental, but a lot of Tampa Bay's issues on defense the last couple of weeks, especially with what, the perimeter runs, the outside stuff, the zone stuff, a lot of it's been their tackling. They haven't been wrapping up. They haven't been taking guys down in the open field when they should. Granted, some of the players that they're going up against are making good plays in those scenarios, but a lot of it is really, really just poor tackling at the end of the day, especially in the environments. You're going to have to zone in on that even more. That could possibly be there this weekend. But if Tampa Bay can just get their fundamentals down and tackle a lot better on defense, then they should win this game going away. However, that remains to be seen, and that's a big reason why I think this game is going to be closer than most people think, especially more closer than Vegas thinks.
And also, this is also something that we brought up on the podcast too, is that Mike Szabo actually had his prediction was 35-17. I think it was, Mike, is what you had said, or in that range.
No, I think it was like 10 to 15 points. I think that was the Chiefs Steelers one. I think they'll win by like 10 or something like that. I had the Bucs and Eagles.
Yeah, and you had and I know for a fact you had also said, because both Ian and DeLuca actually had said that it might be a close game, but you were the only one, Mike, that actually said that it's going to go in the favor of the Bucs. Now, this is something that I got to ask Evan, because we've seen what this Philadelphia Eagles offensive line has done amidst so many injuries. Jason Peters leaving in free agency, Andre Dillard becoming a first-round bust, Jordan Mailata, this guy from Australia who barely played football, just signed an extension not too long, I think, after that 28-22 Bucs win back in November. And then you also have Brandon Brooks, who is an all-pro right guard. He's pretty much done for the year. Would not be surprised if they release him at some point. Lane Johnson going through so many mental issues. Jason Kelce being the anchor of that offensive line. And then you have Jalen Hurts, who really has been remarkable on the offensive side of the ball and being one of the best rushing quarterbacks in the league this year, obviously with, Lamar Jackson being hurt the final 4 games of the season. What do you see here, Evan, with this, with the matchup with Jalen Hurts, for this Tampa Bay defense? What are some issues that you foresee maybe the Bucs having against him, or some advantages that they've got against Hurts?
So the disadvantage is, his ability to make plays out of structure, whenever the pass rush forces him out of the pocket, or let's just say just the play breaks down in terms of protection or whatever's going on that first level, he's still able to get outside the pocket, just get out away from trouble and make plays down the field. The second disadvantage I see here is Dallas Goddard. And this dude, if I'm Todd Bowles right now, he's keeping me up at night, because he is obviously Jalen Hurts and the offensive line are the catalyst behind the Eagles' rushing attack. But Dallas Goddard's ability as not just a receiving tight end, but also as a blocker is a huge component of that, because it keeps defenses honest. It keeps them guessing, because you never know, even if he lines up in the slot, he could be the lead blocker on the screen. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he lines up in line, he could take off down the seam and for a big gain, if he gets lost in coverage. So to me, that's the biggest disadvantage. And ever since Todd Bowles has been here, the Bucs have struggled to defend tight ends. Weeks 1 through 12, they were one of the league's worst teams in doing so. Over the last few weeks, they've improved, but if you look at the tight ends and the offenses they've gone up against, you'll kind of understand why they've improved. I mean, just put it this way, Kenny Yeboah of the New York Jets was making plays on them a couple of weeks ago. So let's just leave it at that. But either way, that's no disrespect to Kenny Yeboah. He's in the NFL. Good job, man. But still, that just shows what I'm talking about. But so those two right there are big disadvantages. And then, but an advantage I do see is, and a lot of this is going to come down to Jonathan Gannon at the end of the day. But the Eagles, and not just their tendency, but their habits to just rush 4, drop 7 back. That works if your front 4 is getting pressure and getting sacks. However, that hasn't been the case despite how talented that front 4 is. You look at that front 4 on paper, especially with Milton Williams backing up Javon and Fletcher on the inside, and you would think you'd get a lot more production out of that, but they're second to last in the NFL in sacks. They're like bottom 5 in terms of adjusted sack rate on Football Outsiders. So if Tampa Bay can stall that front 4 pass rush, then even though the Eagles are dropping 7 back, that's given the Bucs a lot of trouble this year. Brady still will pick them apart if he has plenty of time.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And something else too, you had said about that front 4, they're missing Ryan Kerrigan. They're missing Brandon Graham. Derek Barnett has been an absolute bust really ever since he made he forced the forced the fumble in Super Bowl 52. Really, you have not seen him live up to that first round hype from 2016. So
Josh Sweat's been pretty good this year, though. He looked
yeah.
great against he looked great against Washington a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and that's actually very funny that you bring that up. And I'll definitely have to let DeLuca know. Another good segue. Very good. So that was actually the next person I was going to bring up is defensive end Josh Sweat, who, mind you, was just deemed as questionable per Nick Sirianni earlier due to an illness. Now, if he can't go for this Eagles defense, how much easier does it become for Tom Brady?
Oh, it makes it a lot easier. I mean, that's just obvious. He's obviously the better of the two starting defensive ends. I mean, obviously Brandon Graham's not on the field. Ryan Kerrigan's not in the rotation anymore. But it makes it so much easier because Josh Sweat, he benefits a lot from Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave on the inside. However, he's also a true threat in his own right. So that just allows the Bucs to more focus on the interior and take their chances on the outside, one-on-one with Donovan Smith and whoever else is going to take over Josh Sweat's place. So it's a huge deal.
Now, for the now you've got a little bit on the Tampa Bay offensive side of the ball, and you obviously don't have Chris Godwin anymore. He tore his ACL a couple of weeks ago. Mike Evans against Darius Slay. Obviously, in my opinion, my unbiased opinion, it's going to be a one-sided affair that favors Mike Evans. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree with that? Do you see any other possible, threats or issues that Mike Evans and Tom Brady may come up against Darius Slay and Rodney McLeod in the safety role?
It's really going to be interesting to see how that plays out. If you go off of week 6, Mike Evans, 2 catches, 27 yards on 3 targets. Darius was on him for the majority of that game. However, it was more in a zone coverage type scheme. You look at Pro Football Focus, I think like 18% of Darius's snaps have been in man coverage, yet the Eagles will still swap him from side to side depending on the assignment. So, he might be following a guy around, but depending on if it's man match, so on and so forth, I'm getting a little too technical in the football, in the X's and O's, but either way, he's going to be on Mike Evans for the majority of this game.
Yeah.
Mike Evans has to produce in this game, in my opinion, because if he doesn't, if the Eagles can leave Slay out there on an island with him, quote unquote, because like I said, he doesn't play a whole lot of man, but yet he's still going to follow him. That's going to allow the Vikings to take Rodney McLeod, Anthony Harris, and it's going to allow them to shadow Gronk. It's going to allow them to bring a safety down in the box, more than they want. And that's going to really hurt the Bucs because the Eagles are vulnerable over the middle of the field when it comes to their pass defense and their linebackers. But if you get a safety in there to help out with that, and Darius Slay is doing his job on the outside, now all of a sudden Tyler Johnson, who hasn't really stepped up this year, Brashad Perriman, who's made a couple of plays, but isn't your Chris Godwin, isn't your Antonio Brown, obviously has to step up and make plays. O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate, all these guys who, they can make plays, but they're not playmakers like Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown. That puts the onus more on them. So if you're asking me how I see the matchup playing out, I'm honestly not going to be surprised if either player comes away with, the scenario being considered a victory in their favor. Gun to my head, I would say yes, Mike Evans is going to win this matchup more on more because he knows what's up. However, if he doesn't, though, like I'm saying, it's going to make life so much harder for the Bucs, and it's going to make it so much easier for the Eagles.
That's something that I didn't think I'd ever hear, not only from you, but just from any writer, any professional that understands the game going up against this Eagles team, who were not even supposed to get about 5 wins this season, and they did exactly that. So pretty good stuff going now up against the defending Super Bowl champs. Mike, finish us off here before a little question comes to mind here with Evan. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, so in homage of Rob in our previous conversation, Joey, what do you think the home advantage is going to be like? Obviously, for the Buccaneers, who they hosted the Super Bowl last year, but this is the first real playoff game in a while at Raymond James Stadium. You have the conditions factored in, but what's the atmosphere going to be like? Does that play some things for the Bucs, make it harder for the Eagles, plus the conditions and all the other factors and X's and O's?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's going to be huge. Raymond James is going to be rocking. They're 7-1 this year at home. The only loss was 9-0 to the Saints in the rain. They have also played the Saints in the rain last year when they got their butts whipped 38-3. But that's more about it just being the Saints than the weather conditions at the end of the day. But Raymond James is going to be rocking. It's going to be a huge deal. Like you said, first playoff game in a long time, actually since 2007, to be honest. So yeah, they're going to be ready. They're going to be hyped. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Okay, so now we got to ask, we obviously have all of our predictions, and I have the Bucs. Mike has the Bucs. But Evan, for you, we know you've got the Bucs, but what is the score?
Yeah, I got Tampa Bay winning, but I've got them winning by a score of like 29-27. Whether that means, it's going to be a close game. Right now, you can't trust this Tampa Bay defense, especially in the run game, as crazy as that sounds, especially in the perimeter run game. Everything the Eagles like to do, Tampa Bay sucks at stopping right now. Just put it that way. But now, granted, there's still a lot of questions when it comes to the Eagles defense. They went on that great run, 7-3 to close out the season. But those first 9 games before they played Dallas in the finale, they didn't play a damn person at quarterback or really an offense that was any good except for Justin Herbert and the Chargers. And he hung 350 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 27 points on them. So that 7-2 run where the defense allowed like 16 points a game, all these really incredible stats, they didn't really play anybody. So I'm interested to see how they perform. Obviously Dak Prescott threw 5 touchdowns in the season finale, but they didn't have a lot of the veterans starting on. They didn't really have a lot of starters just in general starting on defense. So not really sure I trust this Eagles defense. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game because I don't trust the Bucs offense. But at the end of the day, I think that playoff experience, the Tom Brady factor, is going to be just enough for Tampa Bay to win.
Yeah, exactly. And keep in mind also, a lot of the guys from Super Bowl 52 are either gone or they're on the injured reserve. And Jason Kelce cannot be the only one to kind of get this team past Tom Brady.
Well, yeah, and in terms of postseason experience, the 2 positions that matters most in NFL is head coach and quarterback. And while Nick Sirianni went to the playoffs twice with the Colts, he's never been head coach in the playoffs. So, that's a huge factor in this game, especially on the road.
Exactly. Yep. That is 100% the truth. Well, ladies and gentlemen, alongside my man Mike Szabo and, of course, Buccaneers on Sports Illustrated writer Evan Winter, our good friend and our good friend of the brand, I'm Joey Jarzynka. For all of us here at the Primetime Rundown and the Instant Reaction Series and Blackjack Media Group, enjoy Super Wildcard Sunday and Monday and Saturday, Super Wildcard Weekend, and we'll see you next time.